Welcome back everybody, I'm Nick930, and today we're going to talk about projectors, mainly BenQ's brand new gaming projector, the X3000i. The X3000i is a 4K Ultra HD HDR capable projector, tailor-made for the next generation of gaming. With it, players can enjoy their games on a massive screen in the comfort of their own home, making all those epic open-world reveals significantly more impressive. I've tested several next-generation games that feel almost like brand new experiences, as massive set-piece moments and epic large-scale battles now have a genuine cinematic feel to them. But these observations would of course apply for any projector setup. What's impressive is just how well BenQ's flagship model here is able to portray these scenes, with accurate color, high brightness, and a great response time. And while it does have a hefty $1,999 price tag, the size-to-price ratio is considerably better when considering the price of a traditional TV at similar sizes. There's of course still big benefits to sticking with backlit panels, as we'll discuss in a bit, but if you have the space for it and can manage your ambient light levels well enough, then a projector like the X3000i may be an attractive option. And while this isn't a sponsored video, I do want to thank BenQ for sending me this product so that I could create this review. Alright, so let's start with the form factor of the unit itself. The X3000i is a pretty beefy, almost cube-shaped unit, roughly 11 inches wide, 8 inches tall, and 10 inches deep. It weighs in at a little over 14 pounds, which is a pretty typical weight for most home theater projectors, and can either be placed right side up for a projector stand, or mounted upside down using a ceiling mount. The unit only comes in a matte white finish, with a nice smooth black finish on the front panel, and a corner-mounted lens, meaning the projector itself will need to be positioned slightly off-center in order to center your image. On the left side of the projector, there's a built-in control panel, which can be used to power on the unit, switch inputs, and navigate the menus. There's also an inlet with 2 manual adjustment wheels that can be used to zoom the image in slightly and focus the lens. The lens itself uses a 4 LED system, capable of up to 3000 lumens, producing a surprisingly bright image and great default color accuracy, even in daytime viewing conditions. The image is again native 4K, meaning it can achieve a 3840 by 2160 resolution at a 16 by 9 aspect ratio. Additionally, because it's LED, the lifespan of the light will be considerably longer than more traditional projector lamps, with a 20,000 hour estimate in normal mode, and roughly 10,000 more with the Eco mode enabled. Though this latter option will of course impact the quality of the projected image. Moving on from the lens, we have the rear panel that offers 2 HDMI 2.0 ports, one 3.5mm jack, USB Type-A, optical, an RS-232, and the main power input. Additionally, if you remove the top cover, the X3000i also has one more hidden HDMI, though because of the design of this particular port, it's intended specifically for the included BenQ S01 media stick, and is therefore not recommended for other devices like Chromecast or Fire Sticks. Thankfully, the S01 stick that's included is a really nice device. Because it uses the Google Play Store, there's no Netflix, but everything else like Disney+, HBO Max, Hulu, and Paramount are all there, and they all load very quickly. This device also allows for Bluetooth connectivity, which was useful as I was able to link up my Bluetooth bookshelf speakers wirelessly and watch various shows and movies. What's odd though is that the base projector itself doesn't seem to offer a way to connect to Bluetooth devices, meaning HDMI devices like my PS5 were stuck outputting through the projector's internal speakers instead, requiring me to run a long optical cable just to get better sound quality. If running cables aren't an option for you, the built-in projector speakers aren't necessarily that bad. The X3000i makes use of a pair of internal 5-watt speakers located beneath the rear input panel. The sound was crisp and filled the room decently enough when watching a few shows, but if you're going through the trouble to attach a 120-inch screen to a wall, chances are you're going to want some nice surround sound to go with it, and you'll need to make use of either the eARC, 3.5mm audio jack, or optical to accomplish this. Assuming you've got the sound squared away, setting up the projector itself is pretty painless. The hardest part for me was just clearing out the space and hanging up the screen. For my setup, I placed the projector on an AV cart and adjusted the height of the cart itself to suit my needs. Because of the 1.3 times zoom, this projector is technically considered a long throw, meaning it can be placed pretty far back from the screen to cast the image properly. In order to fit the 120-inch screen, I had to place the projector roughly 10 feet away. It can technically be pushed back even further for a recommended maximum of 150 inches. Though, at 3000 lumens, you're probably better off sticking between 100 to 120 inches to maintain good brightness levels. Once the distance and height have been locked down, smaller adjustments can be made using the built-in round legs at the base of the projector. If these legs aren't enough, the projector can also be flipped upside down and adjusted using the optional adjustment legs. Though, in my situation, this would lower the height of the lens just enough that the couch would block the image. So I just used a tiny piece of cardboard for each of the bottom legs to lower the image just right. You can technically use a digital feature included on the projector called 2D keystoning to fine-tune the image as well. However, this is highly recommended against, as any sort of extra digital processing will inevitably introduce more input lag, and will technically alter the native 4K resolution into something slightly smaller. Now, let's talk about the actual image quality and setup. Honestly, I really didn't have to do much here. Right out of the box, the color calibration for this projector was surprisingly good. According to their website, this projector is capable of projecting 30-bit color and offers 100% of the DCI P3 color space. This means that the projector's color range is on par with what you'd expect to see on an actual movie theater screen. When shown in a perfectly dark environment, the image quality really speaks for itself. Games like Horizon Forbidden West really pop on the screen, with bright greens, blues, and reds, and no sign of any reflections or rainbow effects that some projectors suffer from. But then again, these are ideal conditions, and for me, I can only achieve this perfect image quality late at night when the sun is set. Otherwise, even with all the blinds drawn, there's a decent amount of light pollution, and the reconstruction of blacks and whites on the screen isn't quite as accurate. This is where more traditional TVs have an advantage, especially newer OLEDs, that can provide vivid colors and true blacks, blending in flawlessly with the physical bezel on the screen itself. It's very distracting to see a slightly gray border in a film contrasting with the black felt of the projector screen. However, the image cast by the X3000i is still plenty serviceable, even when I open up the blinds completely. The image is still bright enough to make out all the details, and I never felt like the image was being lost against the backdrop of the screen. Now, I did have to fine-tune the settings a little bit, as the color balance was slightly off. And because I did some initial calibration during the day, the contrast was a bit off when later viewed at night. But it's otherwise pretty solid right out of the box, and shouldn't require too much calibration. For users not willing to calibrate at all, the projector also comes with a few preset game modes designed to suit different game genres, including first-person shooters, RPGs, and sport games. Though, like with any TV that offers similar preset configurations, I still highly recommend sticking to a carefully tuned user profile instead. Now let's talk gaming performance. This is a gaming projector after all, and while image quality and general presentation is certainly important, the actual playability of the game itself is key. When running in its maximum quality 4K mode, the X3000i has a latency of only 16 milliseconds. Meaning, when you press a key on your controller, you should expect that input to take about 16 milliseconds to register on the screen. When considering most computer monitors and even high-end TVs are aiming for a blistering fast 1 millisecond response time, 16 milliseconds really doesn't sound too appealing, especially if you plan on hooking up your PC build to this projector to play competitive first-person shooters. That's why this particular projector isn't really being marketed for that style of game, but instead seems to be pushing much more strongly towards large, open-world single-player experiences. This is a smart move, as fast response times, while still important, are not a necessity for games like Horizon Forbidden West. In fact, despite using 1 millisecond monitors all the time, I genuinely didn't notice much of a difference gaming on this projector at its maximum 16 milliseconds. It's also worth noting that 16 milliseconds is pretty average for a long-throw projector, as some projectors can suffer from delays of up to 27 milliseconds. Even still, if you really want to trim down that response time, The X3000i also offers 2 lower latency options to maximize performance, including an 8 millisecond mode and a 4 millisecond mode. The downside to this is that you won't be able to enjoy a native 4K resolution, and are stuck at only 1080p. Even more disappointing than that though, is the fact that the projector still uses HDMI 2.0, rather than the newer HDMI 2.1. Meaning, the maximum frame rate that can be achieved when playing at 4K is only 60 frames per second. Like with the latency modes, you can still make use of the next-gen platform's high refresh rate settings, including a 1080p 120Hz mode and even a 1080p 240Hz mode. But the image quality hit to games like Spider-Man running at 1080p 120Hz is pretty severe on such a large screen size. And in my opinion, these modes just aren't worth using outside of competitive fighting games or online first-person shooters. And that's really all there is to it. Overall, the X3000i is a true beast of a gaming projector, with some great color accuracy, bright output, and a nice form factor design. I don't personally have much experience with personal home theater projectors, as I typically lean more towards traditional flat screen displays due to their simplicity. But I was surprised to find that this projector was relatively simple to set up. The hardest part was probably just assembling the screen. And even then, you don't technically need a screen either. All you really need is some clear space, an outlet, and a flat surface, and you can project your games anywhere. And you're also not limited to newer next-gen systems like PS5 or Xbox Series X either. Because the input's just a simple HDMI, you can play all kinds of cool stuff on this. We even had a few friends over and played some classic N64 and PlayStation games, which, sure, aren't 16:9 by default, but blown up on a projector screen, it's far more accommodating than having a bunch of people huddled around a TV. The only real issue with this projector is the lack of more modern HDMI 2.1, limiting the display to only 4K 60fps. Sure, very few console games, even on PS5 or Series X, can push past 4K 60, so this may seem like a non-issue. But this limitation also means new options like VRR are similarly not supported, meaning the new 120Hz in Spider-Man Remastered, despite technically staying under 60 frames per second, still forces the projector to run at 1080p, rather than the 4K 40fps that you'd find on newer TVs. To be fair, HDMI 2.1 has not really become a commonplace feature for the projector market, as there's only a handful currently available that even offer the feature. But when it comes to choosing between a projector or a TV for a new gaming display, this is certainly something to keep in mind. But what do you guys think? Are you looking at trying to game at this scale, or are you content with a smaller backlit screen instead? Let me know in the comment section. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more content posted every week.